Hey everyone, it is Sean and Dave here from Saturday Morning Cartoons. We want to thank the following people for going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons and supporting our show. So a huge thank you to Derek Haynes,
Dr. Jason Woods,
Jamal Newman,
Melanie Harker,
Allison Keene,
the one and only Sean Paul Ellis,
and the amazing Dave Trumbore.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, it might sound kind of weird that we are thanking some familiar people and ourselves in this list, but we want to let you listeners out there know that we are not just asking you to support us through Patreon. We are actually putting our hard-earned dollars into the show as well. So we just want to say thank you to those who have supported, and for anyone who can't but would like to help out the show in some way, feel free to share our Patreon page within your social media circles. It would really help a lot.
So thank you guys. We appreciate you going to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons to sponsor and support our podcast. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from Paradigm City, I'll be your co-host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, your favorite Megadeus and mine, Sean Paul Ellis.
Oh, man.
How's it going, bub?
David. I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself?
Good, Megadeus.
Oh, God.
Are we back in Mecha month? Is this March? What's happening here?
It really kind of feels like we jumped back into Mecha March, or March Madness.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, though, we are rounding out April with another giant fighting robot.
Yeah, it just happens to fall squarely in the anime category. This is actually one that I was upset did not make it into Mecha March Madness because it was rated too low. Now, that's not to say it was rated low at all. It was just compared to like the heavy hitters we had in the top 8. This did not quite make that mark. So, of course, we're talking about the Big O. Yeah. And what do you think the Big O stands for, John?
I don't really know.
No, I have
I'm
no
actually
idea.
a little bit. I'm actually a little
knew.
bit confused. No, I don't. It was always one of those things that like when it was on television, I remember watching it very fondly and thinking to myself, where are they going with this? And then
for 26 episodes,
where
are they going with this?
Where are they going with this? And then sort of because I watched it on Adult Swim and it was sort of that serial every night that you would see. There were times where I would miss episodes, but it didn't feel like it really mattered. It didn't feel like it was something that if I missed something that was so severe, because every once in a while, I mean, there was an overarching story and they had that through narrative that kind of came through, but in and of itself, this was just kind of like every week it was like let's fight a giant robot and you're on board for it.
Totally.
Or maybe 2-episode arc where you fight a giant robot and you're still like, oh yeah, I'm on board with this.
Or like a 26 episode arc where you just keep fighting giant robots.
Yeah,
that's what I'm here for.
And you're like, I'm just on board with it. It doesn't matter.
This is one of those things that like it would have gotten high marks for me in Mecha March Madness just because it had like it established everything right off the bat. And we're going to get into this here in a second, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But like, it had the fights you wanted to see. It had great introduction of characters. It had great introduction of story and style. It pretty much had everything you want in like a first episode and a cliffhanger to leave you wondering what's going to happen in the next episode.
You got me on a cliffhanger. Yeah. It teases so much stuff throughout the entire episode that you just really, it feels like everything is just one progressive cliffhanger where they're kind of planting these little seeds along the way where they're just like, this is going to pay off in about 25 more episodes. And you're like,
maybe.
Will it?
Will it?
Will it? I mean, I hope.
Well, before we get too much into that, let's give folks out there a history of the show itself.
Sure. So The Big O is a Japanese animated television series created by designer Kiichi Sato and director Kazuyoshi Katayama for Sunrise. The Big O aired in Japan from 1999 to 2000. The English language version premiered on Cartoon Network in 2001. Originally planned as a 26-episode series, low viewership in Japan reduced the production to only the first 13 episodes. Positive international reception. Hey, USA.
Yeah,
USA.
We did something right for once. 15 years ago.
Positive international reception resulted in the second season consisting of the remaining 13 episodes co-produced by Cartoon Network, Sunrise, and Bandai Visual. The cartoon series was designed as a tribute to Japanese and Western shows from the 1960s and 1970s. The series is done in the style of film noir and combines the feel of a detective show with the mecha genre of anime. The set piece, reminiscent of tokusatsu productions of the 1950s and 1960s, particularly Taho's kaiju movies, and the score is an eclectic mix of styles and musical homages.
Still doesn't explain what Big O and Megadeus means. But
None of it doesn't explain anything. Still so many questions, even 16 years after the fact from watching this. So many questions.
Hey, maybe the synopsis of what the show's actually about will help clear it up. What do you think?
Hit it up.
All right, here we go. So the story of Big O takes place 40 years after a mysterious occurrence causes the residents of Paradigm City to lose their memories. The series follows Roger Smith, Paradigm City's top negotiator. He provides this, quote, much-needed service with the help of a robot named R. Dorothy Wainwright and his butler, Norman Berg. When the need arises, Roger calls upon Big O, a giant relic from the city's past. Does that explain it for you? I'm all cleared up.
No, not at
Does
all.
it make sense?
I'm still super.
Oh yeah, no,
it's still very confusing.
Makes zero sense whatsoever. I don't know if is Big O. This is without any research into it or remembering things from 16 years ago. But is Big O supposed to be like Big Omega?
I kind of always felt that it was sort of like a Greek illusion, like Alpha and Omega.
There's a lot in here, so
yeah.
But then some of the other names are not so much.
No, and I guess that's what it is that, as much as it's mentioning that there's a lot of eclectic mixing of music and styles that are in this, I kind of feel like there's a lot of eclectic references to literature,
religion,
to time, religion, chance, luck, a lot of kind of very heavy concepts that I will say, to the fault of this show, in some cases, it never really kind of puts its finger on something and says, this is definitively what it is, which can be a little bit maddening, but also for the sake of the show is kind of fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the only defining factor is that it's Mecha Batman, essentially.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
It's like Batman the animated Mecha series is essentially what this is.
I wrote this down that it was a cross of Batman TAS and a couple elements and some style points nodded towards Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, it's definitely with the music specifically is something I can see, and then the characterizations a little bit too. But yeah, let's jump into it. So let's start. Speaking of music, let's start with the theme song tonight. So you can't miss what show you're watching when you listen to this theme song. So what were your thoughts on it?
It was weird to watch it again because I watched the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Let me set the stage.
Yep.
I set up and I queued the first episode, which is what we watched tonight.
Right.
And so as I'm watching it, I may have missed an upload that actually had that intro at the beginning of episode 1. And so I'm actually kind of glad that I did it because it was something that just kind of it threw me right into the episode. And I don't actually think that the theme song, if you would watch it first and foremost getting into this, it does a disservice to everything that's happening, because in many cases they're going to spell some of these things out for you. And let's be honest, this is 1 minute and 9 seconds of just the word Big O being said over and over and over and over again,
with just a
somebody
in the background. That's it.
So just somebody on a drum machine just went they just did this. Loop it. and that was it.
Loop. And now give me my money.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was just a woman just going Big O, and then
essentially
they were like,
loop
and they were like, loop it.
Loop it. Which is actually really funny when it comes to the theme of the Big O.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Man, maybe then that does kind of tie in very well with all of it, but
I think that's a stretch. But
I think I'm reading too much.
Yeah, a little bit much. What I've read about the theme song though is that it was originally meant as an homage to Queen's theme from the Flash movie.
No way.
Flash Gordon movie. Yeah, I don't know why I just wrote Flash, but because it just go Flash. Oh, you save every one of us. So if you know that, because it has that driving beat in the background too, and they just say Flash over and over again, which is fantastic. I don't know if that quite works as well for this show, but it's fun. It's not it's not something that gets stuck in your head. It's just kind of okay, let's get to the show here.
It's a little bit annoying, but I mean they do show you they do show you a bunch of kind of like noir 60s style imagery.
Yeah, it was very much like a lot of Hitchcocky kind of like Vertigo looking. Yeah, some cool like icons there.
Which were fun.
Yeah.
Sort of like a timepiece, like a watch spinning around. We had the car that Roger Smith drives kind of like flipping around. We have Big O, the Megadeus, flipping around.
And like silhouettes of people and like,
like a lot of negative space, a lot of outlines, that they have for all these different things. And so you're introduced a little bit to this bizarre 60s style. You're also introduced to 4 characters, and they don't give you the names. They flat out, they show you Roger Smith and they're like negotiator. And this is the point where I think if you aren't familiar with the show, watching this theme song for the first episode kind of ruin it, is because they show a picture of Dorothy and they don't even say her name. They just say android.
Yeah.
And
it's like, well, okay.
Well, I mean, it was my first time. Like, it's not that it's a big reveal, but it's...
Well, it kind of is. I mean, in the first episode, it's part of the plot. It's like you said, it's not the most important thing, but it is part of the plot. But then to your point, when you watch the first episode, when you watch the first episode, it didn't start off with this theme song. We had to find it separately.
Right.
Which is, so it probably started showing up in like the second or third episode even. Which would make a little more sense.
They were smart enough to kind of do that, because I think throwing you into this universe and this world, especially these first couple shots that we have, do a better job of setting up the tone than any introduction or theme song that you could have at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Would almost kind of feel fake, cheap, and ridiculous. And so but all in all, I don't know. I'm middle of the road. It didn't get stuck in my ear. I was annoyed halfway, like 30 seconds through. I was like, let's wrap this up.
So I think what happens is, before we get into like some other stuff here, I think what happens is in the first few episodes, it's just that like there's a line of text, which is very famous for people who know this series, that scrolls across the front, and then it's just like this, the image of the robot face like emerging from like a pool of essentially like lava or like molten iron or molten ore or some sort of curative whatever. But so I think that's what they used in the early goings. So I think that's why we saw that, and we saw this weird theme song later. Before we get off of the theme song, though, did you watch the outro song?
I did watch the...
What do you think of whatever this is?
Oh, don't you mean seductive Roger sitting on top of an hourglass?
Oh, hello, ladies.
There's a male-female duet that's going on in the background for
ballad.
him. It was okay. It was very classy.
It was like weird. It was like Archer classy, though. So it wasn't quite... It was kind of just like, not sure what you're going for.
There were moments where I was... Yeah, it was weird. I like, because it talks about like feeling alone, and so it's very thematic in terms of what the show is going for, and kind of understanding, yourself and your person. And then when the other person joins into the duet, you're just like, oh, well, it's kind of sweet because now it seems like they're not alone. But then you listen to the song and you're just like, no, these are just 2 people who are just very clearly alone.
Yeah.
And then did you see the stinger that's at the end that's right after it?
Oh, it like leads into the next episode where it's just the phone ringing.
Yeah, it's the phone ringing, and then it's somebody picking it up and like saying, almost kind of like panicky, saying the name of the episode.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that, but I loved that. It was almost
that connection. Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost worth sticking through creepy, classy like duet at the end,
like sepia toned Roger on his giant hourglass. What a weird thing. It's like the theme song and the outro are so weird and like completely separate from anything to do with the show, in my opinion. Yeah. That they just feel very separate.
God. I don't
know. Hey, that's a great pose. If you guys are looking for like new pictures to send out to family and friends, sepia tone, glancing over your shoulder, sitting backwards, cross-legged on a giant hourglass might be a look you're into. Give it a shot. Send us a card. Okay, speaking of weird styles, let's talk about the animation style of this thing, because it's one of my favorites.
So one of my favorite things about this is just sort of as we've mentioned, this is supposed to pick up this very classic 60s and 70s noir, detective / in this case negotiator. But they do a great job with the thickness of the lines that they have, which again is very, and not only just the thickness of the lines to outline each one of the characters, but also inside of their faces, like the specific laugh lines, furrowed brows, Roger Smith's crazy ass hair and his weirdo eyebrows that he has. Like, I mean, I mean, everybody in this show that has like facial hair, like the officer that we have that
Yeah.
we're introduced to, like everybody seems to have something that's like really interesting and distinct.
Well, he's
Even the
got that
butler,
weird like scar vein thing too on his head that I don't know
right?
quite what that is.
But he's got these like really like bushed out
Yeah.
furry mutton chops. I don't want to get too much into this, but like everybody has because I mean I know we're going to talk about the characters. In
Yeah,
just
but
a
that's
minute,
fine
like,
because this is their style and their kind of
Yeah.
design, and that does help them stand out. And you're not introduced to that many, but this helps
Right.
them be very signature and specific. Yeah.
But even like the background characters seem like they have unique character. Like the city that you're in, that you're introduced to, like the Paradigm City or the City of Amnesia, like everybody seemed to have grit. Like it just on top of them, which was really interesting to kind of see. And in terms of being able to place this in terms of its atmosphere, they nail it. They really nail it.
Yeah, I love the fact like you mentioned earlier the opening scene. We kind of get a shot of Roger driving his fantastic sedan, which we'll talk.
Oh.
That's like a character in itself.
So badass.
It's so cool. So he's driving that through the city, and you get this. There's really cool camera angles that follow it through that really show off the city and also the style. So it's kind of that Art Deco style of architecture and artwork mixed with that film noir that works really well together. And it really does kind of harken back to like Batman the Animated Series. So if you know the opening theme song and intro of Batman the Animated Series, then you kind of know what Paradigm City looks like, except in the daylight. So you actually get to see like what everything is rather than hiding it all in shadow. I loved, this isn't animation, but I loved the music kind of harkened back to that era too, right? So it's got this kind of timeless look to it. It's got because not everything is pristine. Like some of the buildings are immaculate and they're fine and people use them and they use them as businesses and homes and they're in and out of them. But then there's other shots where it's like a dilapidated building is like leaning right up against another perfectly good building. It's like crumbling and falling apart while you're playing this kind of like melancholy jazz or even like a bouncier, energetic kind of jazz in the background. But jazz never feels contemporary or modern to me. Like it always feels like it's got some history to it. It always feels like I'm listening to it from 70 years ago. It never feels like it's happening now. It's always got kind of that timeless character. So I like that. I like the fact that Paradigm City is a contrast in and of itself, though, right? What's funny?
I just keep having this idea of like Kenny G just doing like this smooth, soft jazz in the background, and you're just like, hey, pull up a bar stool. Let me tell you all about.
Yeah, I'm smoking a
Paradigm City, a clove cigarette.
Smoking cloves, yeah, exactly.
It's like, guys, let me tell you all about Paradigm City.
That's an aggressive pull on that clove. We're gonna be here all night. You're gonna go through a whole pack.
What's wrong?
And then nothing. 10 years down the road.
Oh,
Big head in here. So I love the design of Paradigm City, right? Because it's not just a normal city. It's supposed to be kind of like Manhattan. But the issue is that, 40 years ago, something happened and people can't remember what it was. But the current state of Paradigm City is that some places are under domes and other places are like ghettos. Like they're like tenement housing, row housing, projects, but they're like interspersed around these domes. And it's very obviously like a class divide. We don't get that so much in this first episode, but you do get visuals from like almost like helicopter shots and like driving through the city. You get these like gleaming, polished interior and exterior of these domes. And then outside, like Sean said, everything's kind of it's gritty. It's got snow on it. It's got dirt and steam and fog and smoke. And it's a great contrast between those two things. Thought that was
they're
really
like
cool.
reverse snow globes.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. Fuck.
Like everything inside of it is really cool. And subconsciously, the look of this world actually inspired a story that I wrote, which played up on those tropes. So it's like certain well-to-do folks kind of lived under this dome, but the class divide wasn't inside and outside. It was different layers of the dome. So essentially like all the nasty kind of like fumes and like the accumulated grit. Think about like a smog-filled city, but all that atmosphere is trapped in a dome. And like if you live on a high enough level, you have like filtration and stuff that keeps the air clean. But if you live too low, all that shit kind of settles down onto the people that are in the lower grit, as I called it. So, but this was definitely like an influence on that story.
Can we get this short story up
It's
on
a full novel.
Facebook?
It's a full novel from
we
like
get
10
this?
years ago.
Okay. All right. Just saying, can we get this up on our Facebook or our Twitter, Dave?
I mean, we can if people are interested.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm interested now. I want to read it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll send it along. But as far as animation style continuing, yeah, I love the clean, kind of crisp lines. Um, the
Very
buildings, the
sharp,
destruction were cool, very sharp.
very sharp lines for everything. Even like the shoulders.
Oh well,
It
yeah,
just,
they could cut you.
oh my god, it just, it feels like, in some of this looks like whenever I began sketching,
Hmm.
and kind of like understanding and taking like art classes in college and stuff, and it was one of those things where it was just like, oh, like I'm doing very sharp, very jagged lines right
Very
now,
like
and so
defined. Yeah.
yeah, everything is so distinct in this.
The animation as far as like the action was pretty cool too. They had some pretty intense gun battles go back and forth, and then that elevates to like missile battles, and that elevates to robot battles, and they were all very kinetic and fun. It was the
Yeah.
fun factor really jumped up as the show went on. Let's talk about the robot design real quick because it is a first episode, but we do get two giant robots fighting each other. So,
Oh
what do
my
you think about
god.
the robots?
So we want to do Dorothy 1 or Dorothy 2?
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. Let's start with
Or our Megadeus.
let's start with the Megadeus. He makes a
Yeah.
pretty cool entrance, which we'll talk about in the plot. But as far as his look, what do you like about
It's you mentioned the Art Deco style. He just sort of feels like the Empire State Building come to life
it? Yeah,
with two arms that have what looks kind of like a like I never knew like the parts that he has that are on the back of his arms,
okay.
which
Like
was
the
always
pistons.
the thing. Yeah, the pistons, like those portions of it. It always felt like that it was like that it was like cocking a gun, but
Mhm.
it was inside of his fist. And I always, that was kind of the most fascinating thing about this show for me, was how is this thing cocking, providing pressure or some reaction or catalyst where he's able to like shoot fire from that fist when it makes contact. But then how does the hand remain in place that's delivering the punch and all the fire and the heat? To me, I was just like, I'm not trying to think too much about this because
Exactly.
I love the design and the look of this.
I was like, I loved it. It was a cool effect. I have no clue how it functioned, but it was
But
cool.
the other things that I loved just sort of about this robot in general were just these giant weighty shields that were on the back of his arms that he could use to block. And so in a lot of these battles where he's sparring against some of these robots,
Yeah.
especially in this first,
Yeah.
he just kind of has them
He
up,
just absorbs
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of taking this damage. Like you can tell maybe it's something where he's not maybe a really skilled fighter,
Yeah.
you know.
He's
At
comfortable
some
with
points,
this thing at this point, but
right?
not. It doesn't look like. I don't know. Maybe it's a tactic because I believe. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's an episode later on down the line where he changes tactics, and I think he can either drop those shields or like change the arms completely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then but the thing that was always so interesting about this is, and for me and the design, is that like it's a big purple robot.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well,
a
you're
big
right. It's like a
purple,
walking building.
right. It's this big purplish robot that kind of has almost like a gold corset.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
know what
around-
that like weird crown shaped thing is. Like they've got like a very like they've got like
Yeah.
pointy heads. They've got like a lot of ridge work. I don't know what how to
It's-
describe it.
Well, like it's got a weird like, because like with armor, like sometimes you'd have like a cod piece.
Sure.
Like this thing has like a really sharp crotch cod piece, and then it has an even sharper like butt piece to
Sure.
it as well, which is
Well,
always
so
weird.
when he's fighting, he can smash as many buildings around him as possible.
But then it's just got this little tiny peanut head
Yeah,
up on top.
it's a strange design, but you can't mistake it for anything else. And the funny
Right.
thing is, like all the robots in this, or are they all Megadeuces, or is he the only Megadeus?
I
I
feel
don't
like
know what they call these
I
things.
get again. I'll say this: there's a lot of instances in this show where people and things have two names. Like we have Big O, and he's also synonymous with Megadeus. We have the City of Amnesia, which is also synonymous with Paradigm City.
Right.
you
Got
know?
Roger Smith. You've got the negotiator. You've got a lot of stuff.
So there's a lot of in many cases, and I don't know if this was like a deliberate tactic or if this was something that was like weirdly lost in translation. But identity is a huge
Yes.
portion of this show, and so for me, in some instances, this was like a way to kind of fuck with me about the identity of things, because everything seemed to have one or two or possibly three names in certain instances. Like even Dorothy, like Android, Dorothy, Miss Wainwright.
Yeah.
She's got like another portion to her name too, where you keep sitting there and you're thinking to yourself like, or originally there was Saldana.
You thought it was she was
Dorothy
she was
Saldana.
Saldana's daughter, yeah.
And so there's all these different things where you're sitting there and you're just like, who is what? Again,
Who
this
is
show
anyone?
who like this show again is just really refusing to put its finger down on one thing and say definitively.
Well, but I think that's part of the story though, right? Because like you get the
Right.
layers, and this is getting into the more of the plot. But again, like we find out that Roger Smith is also known as Lieutenant Roger Smith at some point. So
Right.
like everybody has a lot of crazy layers to him, and I like you said, it's frustrating, but I think that's what they intended. I don't think it was like
Right.
an oversight or anything. I'm not saying
and
you
that's what
said
I'm
that,
saying. And I'm saying that like maybe it was something that was intentionally written in, which I'm hoping it was. I don't think that it was something that was really like lost in translation in terms of what they were doing. It felt like everything that they did, which the intentionality behind all of this felt like it was there, like they were driving towards something eventually, which was rewarding to everybody who was watching the program.
Yeah, and like we talked about on the Mecha podcasts, like I love a cool exterior design, but it goes way beyond that for me when you actually get to see like some interior work or almost like blueprints of how these things function and how they work and how they are put together and how they're constructed or taken apart. And we get to see that when Roger jumps in the cockpit because he's flipping switches and he's turning dials and he's stepping on pedals and he's moving gears back and forth. And he's got like the arms kind of function on these weird like semicircular tracks with like joysticks and flip switches. Is a cool looking thing, man. I love
It's
the
like
inside.
It's like a Nordic track. He's
yeah,
in like one of those.
He's just doing his calisthenics on the inside.
Whatever the Chuck Norris like total gym is.
Yeah.
He's rocking out inside of the cockpit.
The weird
of
thing
this
is the
thing with one of
cockpit,
these.
like Chuck Norris's home gym, has plush carpeting in it. It was really weird.
Really does.
And a
Very
TV
bizarre
hanging
for a
on the wall.
dojo.
Yeah, pretty strange. and a cockpit of a Megadeus.
Oh god.
We don't know yet what the inside of the other one looks like. Dorothy 1, spoiler alert, but the exterior of it looks kind of the same. It's very similar.
Yeah.
But it has different weapons. It's got like these tendrils that are very like fine. They have finely tuned like motor functions and like claw thingies on the end of them. So everything that's created or built by whoever at this point has a different look to it, but a similar overall appearance, if that makes sense.
And so the one big difference, obviously, being Dorothy 2 that we're introduced into this episode. And so Dorothy, she just looks like a very prim and proper young lady.
You might mistake her for a girl if you were in a darkened warehouse and had never seen her before and had sunglasses on.
Yeah, maybe provide a picture next time, to kind of understand exactly who you're trying to rescue.
Well,
in these
except she
negotiations.
didn't exist. So
yeah, I feel like there's a failure on a lot of parts.
Well, this is the cool noir part, and we're gonna kind of get into characters and plot here and sort of intermingle them. This was kind of the cool noir part for me though, because what seemed like a straight up negotiation where you just negotiate an exchange of a kidnapping victim for a ransom. It's pretty straightforward. That all goes to shit very quickly. But then that layer upon layer, as you peel back more and more stuff, you start to find there's quite a lot going on and quite a lot that our buddy Roger gets into here. So let's just jump into it. I mean, do you want to start with Roger since he's kind of the first one that we meet? He's literally the first person to talk.
Sure. I mean, we've kind of described, very very proper looking
Bruce Wayne.
Black suit, all black accessories, black hair. Very like dark, thick, kind of black outlines around all of his body. Interesting eyebrows.
Sweet watch.
That we have there. And so, I mean, he looks cool, calm, and confident. Yep. Regardless of the situation.
He actually reminded me of Jason Statham's like transporter, that character.
Yeah.
Because he kind of does the same thing. He'll take, not really as a private eye so much, which is what Roger Smith is supposed to be, but he'll take a job as long as it abides to like his code of ethics, and then he'll also stick to that code. But he's very capable, but he's also got a strong sense of like loyalty, morality, and style. To be honest with you, so
you want to encapsulate Roger Smith's feelings on his negotiations.
I don't know about negotiations, but I know about the criminal. Should I take my tie off and hold it in my butler's face and scream at him?
100%.
What was that scene? That was like the one thing that looked like it was lost in translation. There was like a weird moment. Yeah.
Where he just goes, I feel that criminals should behave professionally.
He just yells it at his butler after walking in the door, slamming his tie in his face. Very strange.
He gets like real pissed off and is just like, well, I'm going to take this out on Alfred.
Yeah. Alfred the butler. That's his name.
it's Norman.
It is.
Um,
And he's got an eye
who-
patch. That's how you can tell he's not Alfred.
again, but it's like really, really like that's like the one thing for Norman that you're just like, what's the mystery behind that? Like, in terms of our officer that we have, as you mentioned, it's the scars on his head.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to go through too quickly,
Okay,
but
cool.
just we have all those things that are really unique. So for the butler, we've got this eye patch. Officer, we've got the scar on his head.
Right.
With Roger Smith, we got these fucking eyebrows, and so it's just.
And then
these are
Dorothy's
all
got
things.
kind of like a weird, kind of like pallid skin, and she's got this kind of robotic voice. Not quite that bad, but pretty bad.
That was a pretty good robot, Dave.
Yeah, but hers is slightly more human than robot, but there's just something off about it. And definitely when she moves, like when she cranes her neck up to talk to him, and it's like you can hear like the servos winding up in there. It's pretty weird.
Oh man.
So what is the first? So this episode was called what? Roger the Negotiator, but it starts instead of the theme song, it starts with a scroll of this line: "Cast in the name of God, ye not guilty." And that is a very famous line for fans of this show because it essentially scrolls across this weird, like, circular view screen of the Megadeus in the cockpit whenever it's going to start up. So it's sort of like testing the person in the cockpit. And if it says, "Cast in the name of God, ye guilty," I don't think it'll start. Or if it starts, it starts in some kind of different mode or something like that. So it's like they're already throwing this religious aspect at you, but it's also sort of like you have to prove yourself worthy to be able to pilot this thing. So that was always just like, there's that, and then like the very final line from the whole series is like, "We have come to terms," and those two things have always stuck with me. Like those two lines for whatever reason. Because they're so weird and they don't really mean anything by themselves, but
together in the context of the show,
then it makes slightly more sense. But just
going through it right now, I got like a weird chill when you said it, and I don't know why.
Because it's such a weird thing to hear, but so specific to this show.
Right.
But yeah, it's a cool thing to like introduce people to, because you're just like, what? And then this giant robot face rises from a pool of like molten iron. It's like, okay, let's get into this. So let's get into it. So what's Roger's first job here as he's driving through the city?
As we mentioned, his job is to negotiate the return of Saldano's daughter,
right? Who's being held
Dorothy
for ransom by
musical artist Beck.
Yep, makes a cameo appearance.
And so musical artist Beck is just like, "Hey, what's up? Stole your daughter. This is the deal." And so they meet in this dark warehouse.
Yeah, it's like a hangar almost or something.
Right. And so as we talked about, sort of the professional nature of Roger's job. He gets out very calm. It's just like, "Here's the money. Where's the girl? Here's the girl." You think it's a normal handoff.
It looks pretty. I mean, nothing really goes wrong for the first 90% of it.
I've never negotiated anything that has stakes that are this high.
I've watched The Negotiator an awful lot, but
the one with Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, hell yeah, I never did it myself.
And then you did it yourself.
And then I did it myself, and everything's fine.
I have to prove my innocence.
That's right. I watched it to prepare for that moment. Yeah.
Jesus.
And it worked.
Was it Kevin Spacey in that?
He was in that.
Yeah, that's right.
He was the other negotiator. It should have been called The Negotiators, but they wanted to keep it for the sequel, I guess.
Oh, God. You don't think it was just going to be like Negotiators 2? More negotiations.
More negotiations.
Tokyo negotiations.
Tokyo negotiations. Never mind, I got nothing. Paradigm shift. All right, so we're back in the warehouse. The girl's been handed over. Everything seems totally fine. And then this like sedan just comes like bursting out of nowhere. This was funny to me because you obviously know that it's the guy who hired Roger to do the job, because Roger says, "I always hate it when my clients don't have any patience," or something like that. Yeah. So this guy comes flying in. At the same time, the guys who got their money just drive through a wall of this warehouse and just crash through it to make their escape. And I'm like, that's a little strange. Like, everything was fine. You just leave with your money and don't be an asshole about it.
Right.
So then there's another kind of funny sequence that happens here. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is the moment where Roger and Soldano, and he's sort of proud of this. He's like, everything went as planned. Here's your daughter. And she's like, "That is not
well done."
My daughter. And I don't understand what's wrong with Soldano, why he was an extra from the movie The Coneheads.
Yeah, he's got something
Uh,
funky going on. He's got a lot of like liver spots, but his head is also very pointy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he just he kind of looks like a human finger.
He just looks
At
like a
some
like
point.
an old man candle that's melting.
Old man
He's an
candle.
old man candle. So we're gonna call him
Just
Old Man
stop,
Candle from now on.
pop over to the Yankee Candle store and
Yeah,
be
just
like, "Can I
shape
get
him
the
up.
old man?"
Get the
Just
old
a
man.
bunch of grandpas that are just in the corner.
Yeah,
You're just like,
just
"All right, just
melting.
come home with me.
Come on, put a wick in it. Let's go.
Give me. I'm gonna light this, and you got until the end of this wick to give me all your sage wisdom."
That's right. The
Pops.
smell of sage too. It's delightful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a
That's
nice,
good.
good twist. All right, so he's pissed because
So,
guess what? That's not his daughter.
yeah. Mm-mm.
It's a straight up android.
Yeah. Which he gets a little bit of flack from, saying like, can't believe you didn't know that this was an android. It's
I
like,
love that he
yo,
takes
buddy,
his
how
sunglasses
often are
off,
you
though.
running into fucking androids?
Well, apparently
like this?
in this world they're like fairly common because they don't react to her like, oh, that's weird. There's one of these walking around. They're just like, huh. Like Roger actually takes his sunglasses off and then he's just like, oh. So that's a weird shift. But guess what? That doesn't even phase Roger Smith, pro negotiator, because what is he? He's ready for that. He's ready for a double cross.
Yeah.
What's he got up his sleeve, Batman?
He pulls out this little control box device out of his pocket.
Yeah.
Because he's saying, because he's getting all this grief for the fact that like this negotiation has clearly gone sour now at this point. Hits this little button and then sort of begins to crank this dial.
I don't know what that was.
You flash back to Grammy-winning artist Beck, who's driving this car, this sedan down a highway, and all of a sudden, like his car, the back of it just kind of explodes, and the suitcase shoots up into the air with these two little like jetpacks that are on the bottom of it. And I was like, how do I get that fucking briefcase? Like, I want one.
I love that him like winding up the thing on the transmitter was almost like he was reeling it in like a
it
fishing
was
pole.
It's so ridiculous.
I love that it was just like flying home, but then the crazy thing was like Beck's thugs get out and start shooting at it with like Tommy guns. He's like, "Don't you idiot, the money!" And then copious amounts of dollar bills spill out of this thing, like more than could have ever possibly been contained in this briefcase to begin with. And it just makes this cool kind of like flowing cloud as the briefcase is still flying off towards Roger. And that's where we get the cool shot of the city. And Roger also has some like, I don't know, some sage words of wisdom that he says there. I didn't write it down, so I don't remember, but he makes some sort of comment about how something about the city.
Oh, right. I didn't write that down.
There's something about like knowing who to trust in the city, which feeds into the next scene, because now he goes to meet up with an informant at a bar. And this is where you get kind of the next cool shot of his car and some of the style that it has. So you want to talk about the Roger Smith Batmobile?
So like, I mean, he gets out of it, and it just kind of, I mean, this whole car seems like it's integrated into parts of the watch, which is like integrated into parts of his house, which is integrated maybe into the Big O. Like this seems like it's something like, yeah, I mean, like the car like locks up like the Batmobile, doesn't it?
It goes. So I had to watch it a couple times because it was unclear. Since everything's very like black in this, it was hard to tell exactly what happened. So it like goes up on these little pistons come out the bottom and push it up like a stand. So it's almost on like a jack stand. And then all this metal, like black metal, encases it. So it's metal encasing metal like all around it, and it forms like a shell, and then it lowers it back to the ground. So it's essentially in like an impenetrable.
It's like in a box.
Yeah, it's like in a metal box at this point, but like in the shape of the same car that's underneath it, which is also metal. So it's just like a weird thing to do, but pretty freaking cool, to be honest with you.
But there's clearly a guy as he's walking into the bar that's like looking at the car who's just like, what the fuck's up with this?
What can I salvage? Yeah, it looked like a bunch of like hoodlums that were ready to just like steal whatever they possibly could from it.
When I saw it, I immediately thought of that like exhibit meme that they have. It's like, yo, dog, heard you like a car, so I put a car inside of a car so you can car while you're car.
Exactly.
And you're just like, damn.
But it is straight up Batmobile, because I mean, like the Batmobile even does that at different times, where it just like turns into a different car altogether or whatever. So, but it was fun. So the scene in the bar was like pretty straightforward exposition. It was just kind of like Roger meeting this unnamed informant who he has like earphones in. He's reading the paper.
He's like an earbud in. I'm assuming that this guy is like, because he even mentions he's like, I've hit my ear to the ground. I've been listening to the streets, and like this guy's an informant. Like,
100%. Because he gets paid. Roger pays him. He basically says he kind of gives him the lowdown that like Saldana doesn't have a daughter. That might come later, but essentially it's you start to get the idea that like Saldano was not just out to get his daughter back. Roger says he was meant to locate her, but then he decided to go the extra mile to try to actually get her back too. And then this guy kind of informs him that there's more going on than meets the eye. That like Saldano bankrolled the creation of Dorothy, and there's some other hairy stuff going on. But that's about all you get out of this guy.
Right.
Yeah. Then we get some more exposition from Roger. This is where he starts to tell you like 40 years ago, everybody lost their memory of everything that happened. And as that's happening, he's driving home, but he gets stopped by this was kind of an odd thing. There was like a police and a military convoy that kind of went in front of him. And that's just to kind of show that like, yeah, people have forgotten things, but it's still kind of the world that we know. There's still like a law enforcement presence. There's the military police presence. And there's still kind of law and order at the same time.
Right.
And he says basically like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, he talks about the fact that like, people don't know really who they are or what they were doing, but every day they wake up trying to remember what that was.
And he basically says like, if you can use electricity and get about your day, then you can you can just do whatever. It doesn't really matter at this point.
It's really depressing. Yeah. It's a really depressing sentiment. Like I've been kind of blown away now watching this and realizing that so much of everything that we're talking about in here, and this will come into play in a little bit, but like so much of this seems like chance and luck, like like a lot of things kind of seem like everything in this city seems like it's binary. Villains should behave one way, good guys should behave one way, and it doesn't feel like there's any gray area in anybody's thought. And maybe that's like a result of kind of having everybody have their memories wiped and trying to understand where they are and who they are.
Yeah, and you don't have enough time to really sort it out. You don't have a lifetime to do it, especially when you're dropped into the middle of it. You don't really know what's going on. He even has a line where he says, most people are okay with not being able to remember stuff except for the old folks. Because it's like they can't remember anything, and now they're going to die tomorrow. So it's like they've only got a couple of days, maybe. That was pretty sad. But it's interesting the way that they set it up. And that's the kind of stuff that's taken me a long time to wrap my head around in the midst of all this crazy giant mecha battle.
So like we get back to Roger's
Wayne Manor
house.
Yeah.
Here we go back to Wayne Manor. He has his moment where his tie off moment where he kind of insults Alfred,
who's also the mechanic, which I love.
Yeah, I do. I love the fact too that it seems like Roger Smith is sort of a dick about some of this stuff. It's just like he talks about like how part of the car is like underperforming by like 1/8.
Yeah, like a 0.0% or whatever, 0.02%. Yeah.
And he's just and Alfred is just like, oh, maybe I serviced it incorrectly. And I was waiting for him to just be like, yeah, maybe you fucking did.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe you'll be wearing 2 eye patches tomorrow.
Or maybe I'll get a butler with 2 eyes. You old bastard.
Yeah, right. But like he's informed that he has a female guest.
Yeah. And then Roger's super thrilled about that. He's like, oh, dude, lady guest.
He is Boner Town walking up like those stairs. Because he pops up and he's just like, I have a very strict rule that only beautiful ladies can enter my mansion. And you're just like, what are you trying? Like, what are you trying to fucking say, bro? Yeah. Like it seems creepy, threatening for 2 seconds. But I mean, I think the idea behind it is like he's supposed to be very suave, very smooth.
I didn't think it was that bad. I did like that the look I saw on his heavily painted eyebrow and his eyes, though, when she turns around and then he realizes that it's Dorothy the android, and for a split second he's like, "But can I get in there?" And then he's just like, fuck. Right.
Damn it.
Like, what do you want, Miss Wainwright? So they go through this whole thing. This is, I think, where she cranes her head up at him again. It's like creaking along. But essentially, she wants to hire him at this point. So that's another twist. This is sort of the femme fatale where it comes into the noir story, right? She essentially should have just had her, like, she should have been a silhouette on the other side of like a, what do you call it? Those like the private eye doors with like the marbled glass or whatever it is.
Oh, with like that says like their name on it.
Yeah.
It's yeah, exactly.
It's essentially that.
Whatever that. Right. And so they have this, and it's very bizarre because like in those moments, it's just sort of like it's sort of the femme fatale, or the woman sort of throwing herself at the man in this. It's sort of, it's similar in this, but it's weird because the entire time I was watching it, I'm just like, she's an android.
Yeah.
Does it still pass a Bechdel test if it's an android? I was like, I
don't know.
I don't know either.
I just love that. I love that they play with that though, because she says, "I need to hire you to be my bodyguard," and he's like, "A private eye doesn't do that, and B, you're android, so what do you need me for? What do you need a human
Right.
bodyguard for? So they more or less work together. He eventually heads off to investigate. Well, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself because we have another character who shows up before they do any of that. But to finish off that point, Dorothy does have a number of times where, like, if somebody tries to threaten her, or if Roger says, I'm going to kick you out of the car, and she's like, I don't think you, as basically like a puny human, cannot move me as an android. There are many moments throughout this.
I have this line.
You got the quotes?
Just,
okay, cool.
You may try, but I doubt a mere human would have the strength.
Yeah, she's got so many times where it's just like he uses her for a decoy later on. She gets blown up. Yeah. There's so many things that happen that she's not a damsel in distress at all, and yet she's still asking for him to be her bodyguard. So it's a little strange, but it's definitely a play on that convention. All right. So we've had their meeting. Now we get another character who shows up.
We get our officer who kind of fills in again a little bit of little bit of peppering in of some of the backstory that we have for Roger Smith, the fact that he used to also serve in the military as well. Right. We get sort of a slip and an overreaction regarding status, where suddenly this officer kind of calls him by, I think he was like a
Lieutenant Smith, yeah.
Lieutenant Smith, and like, Roger's just like, that's not who I am.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not one of your flunkies or whatever. Yeah,
dude, you gotta relax.
Cool, we get it.
Which it's very interesting though to see that kind of, again, that binary reaction where like him on the job, I think he feels comfortable. I think he feels like this is where I belong. The second he's in like these social situations,
or they harken back
people,
to like a previous life or a different status, it's not comfortable. Yeah.
Because he even makes mention about the photos.
Yeah,
he's just like, he looks at it and he says, or the officer
saying like,
he just says like, he goes, it's kind of interesting you have this, even if these, like, who knows if these are our memories or not. And you're just like, well, okay.
Yeah, come on in and touch my pictures and then question my reality, dick.
Yeah. I would have just come in with like, because he like with that white glove and just been like, you gotta fucking dust this picture frame.
Norman is not doing his job.
Yo, Norman Alfred really needs to fix this shit a little bit more than what he's doing right now. This is kind of fucked up.
So I like that they kind of play up on that character angle, but they also drop some more exposition on you. So then you learn the military police are looking for the real Dorothy. So the other sister or the other whatever, we don't know at this point. You also learn from Dorothy herself that Saldano funded her construction. And Saldano doesn't have a daughter, but he does have this factory, and he's got a lot of, quote, dark and dirty secrets, which is why he hired Roger to begin with and did not want the police looking into things, because he didn't want them to find too much stuff. So you would think at this point, Dustin kind of says, like, you already blew it, Smith, so stay out of this, and we'll handle it from here. Well, obviously that's not going to fly. So if you're Roger Smith, the next thing you're going to do is head to the factory, right?
Right, of course.
And of course Dorothy's going to go with you, because she kind of is doing her own thing at this point.
Yeah, she like gets in the car and comes with him, kind of much to his chagrin, but he's like, all right, I'll allow it.
Well, that's where he says that line, or she says that line where like, you can't get rid of me. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they get to this place. They find Saldano inside the factory, which is kind of vacant right now.
It's vacant. It's kind of like it looks like it's been partially destroyed. There's like this big kind of scaffolding set up, but you don't know what it was for.
The scaffolding looks like a cross. Yeah. Again, we're getting like weird biblical references that they're dropping into this the entire time. Yeah. Come up there, you find Saldano is dying, that he's been injured and that there's some blood everywhere.
This is kind of mumbling some weird stuff.
Right. He then suddenly decides that the Dorothy that is there is in fact his daughter, and Dorothy kind of dispels it and is just like, it's just a dying, rambling old man.
But he calls her the second Dorothy.
Yes, he calls her the second Dorothy. And
he's also mumbling stuff like he regrets building it for them, and we were like, I don't know what he's talking about. And then do you remember what he says last?
It's all right, Nightingale.
Yeah, and they're both just.
And you're like,
what?
What the hell is that? Yeah. Okay, great. More like little weird kind of creepy teasers
like
that you get throughout here.
For him. Yeah.
But I mean, it's such an excellent exercise in how well this writing is for this show. Just to kind of keep you involved and kind of keep you guessing, because I want to say by the end of this episode, I had like 10 questions minimum.
Yeah, minimum.
Where I was
we've seen this whole series before.
Yeah, and I've seen this whole series. And again, I was just like, question number 1, the fuck is going on again?
Well, unfortunately, you don't have time to figure that out because a missile is zooming in on your current location. So
yeah, but my Apple Watch tells me that I've been locked on, so I know to get the fuck out of there.
I love that he has to wait until it says like locked on. He's like, and now we run. So the Beck's henchmen have shown up at this point. I'm assuming they're Beck's henchmen.
Yeah, Beck's henchmen show up. We get Dorothy kind of as a diversion.
Yeah,
we get.
He's like, you're an android, right? Run. She just runs down the catwalk at like superhuman speed, getting shot up,
which is ridiculously fun to watch.
It was really funny.
Of just see her like Usain Bolt sprint down.
Well, yeah, you could see her like
catwalk.
literally shift gears and get faster and faster. It was pretty funny.
But we get Batmobile, shoots some missiles, takes out the car, and pretty much blows up a majority of the shit that we have.
I love this because first, when they're sitting there and they just got hit by the rocket, Dorothy's like, are you going to do something? He's like, what? Do you think I packed a lunchbox full of missiles on my day-to-day job? And then he looks at his watch and like cues up a missile. So I'm like, well, clearly you did. So, yeah. Well,
because he's queuing it up on his Apple Watch, it's like guns, missiles. I was like, well, maybe swipe down one more time, and it's probably like, something fucking even more extreme than that.
Maybe we'll find out what it is.
Like what we're about to roll into next.
I just love that he straight blows up the two guys and their car, but also Dorothy at the same time. Dorothy has been like fell off the catwalk and is hanging from like a piece of metal. She's fine. But then the missile from this car just like nukes the whole bottom of the building, and she comes out with like singed on her face and like her hair's all burnt to shreds. What does she call him? She says something like
Roger Smith, you're a louse.
Roger Smith, you're a louse. He's like, it's normally a human woman that called me that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we get it. Yeah, shit.
Again, it's just like, all right, enough. Like I've heard this 60s and 70s language before. Like, you're a louse. Like who?
I like it though because it's delivered in such a weird way as an android that it's cute.
It's so fucking deadpan.
Yeah,
like
it's good.
Like there's almost like no like, or there's very little emotion and feeling that's put behind a lot of her lines, and like it's such a weird. From like everything that we know about that style of television and cinema during that age, everything was so, in many cases, very overly dramatic.
Yeah.
And so
because it came from like a theatrical or a vaudevillian kind of background.
So this juxtaposition really kind of fucks with how you perceive, because it's not fulfilling any of your expectations left and right, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So speaking of, so we had that level of action. Like what could possibly happen next?
Man, we could have like a huge robot trying to break into a bank, try to steal not the money.
No, not the money.
It's trying to steal. It's trying to steal the plates.
What a weird and random thing. Like if you're watching this for the first time, you don't know somehow that this is a giant mecha fighting monster like robot thing. Then what a weird thing to just be like go from this noir story to like, Master Roger, there's a robot breaking into the mint downtown. It's like, thanks, Alfred, I'm on the case. It really just takes a weird flip.
It says West Dome number 5. There was a giant robot. I'm just like, well, we're not like pulling any punches on here,
which is great.
But we're about to get into the punches.
Super punches. So so these two drive right to the heart of the action. They kind of bypass this like rookie on the force who tries to stop them for identification. He's like, boy, you better remember my face next time, and then just drives away. There was a weird thing that happened though.
We get one moment where, as they're passing by a group of people, Dorothy looks out the window with her weird kind of like servo craning neck, and she just goes, "My father." And then you just like roll right past it, and you see this like creepy old guy who kind of looks like Master Roshi from DB.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is this? He's like in a white suit, kind of again with like, he looks like an old man candle as well.
Yeah, he's another melted man candle.
Like, it's just like, all right, well, let's dog ear that. We'll circle back to that in a little bit. Don't worry about it.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that they roll up though, and this robot is just like tearing into the mint, and there's like a full-on battle happening between the robot and the cops who are just shooting it, not doing anything. It's bouncing off its armored hide. It's not doing anything. He's sending his little creepy tendrils into the vault, like scooping aside the money, like, I don't need this shit, and going for the plates.
Out of my way, cash.
Out of my way, liquid finances. So at this point, like Dustin is saying, God, I got nothing.
Liquid finances?
I was trying to think of like,
how are you paying for shit?
I've got money water.
Here's a glass of water.
I have money water. You don't have money water?
I don't have money water, man.
I take a $1 bill, I soak it in a bottle overnight, and then I pay people with that water the next day.
Oh my God.
It's liquid capital.
If you drink that water, then is you just like drinking like?
That's how you raise your net worth.
Oh my God! That's actually smart.
I mean, I thought it was common sense.
You gotta hydrate in order to invest in yourself.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Money water.
That's how you
Head to SaturdayMorningCartoons.com to get your own money water.
Slash money water.
Slash money water. Tune in for our late night infomercial, Money Water. So.
Money water.
So they roll up. Dustin at this point is like kind of narrating what's going on. He's like, oh, there's a giant monster breaking into the mint. And he's going for the plates. Whatever shall we do? I love that Roger rolls up and does not hesitate. He's just like, it's time for me to do the fun thing.
Yep.
So what's he do? Cue it up.
Just gets out his Apple Watch and just screams and it's showtime. Big O! And the Empire State Building just
rises from underneath the earth.
It just bursts forth.
I love
and Dustin's like, yes! And then he's sees it rip apart a building and he's like, no!
I love how this thing shows up though, because like steam like blows out of the sewer system, like sewer lids go flying everywhere. This thing just cleaves the earth with his weird little head, his little eraser head. And like you said, he just carves up through the center of a building and destroys it. Where were you hiding this thing? How is it moving under the city? What is happening right now?
What is the elaborate sewer system that you have that's set up that allows this thing to like burst forth?
Wherever you are.
All these questions are coming.
And I think that's actually answered later on, but it's kind of like crazy that it's just like, it's not like you just called the Batwing in. Like you called a building-sized robot to burst forth from the ground and destroy a lot of infrastructure.
And piss off Dustin.
Yeah, he's pissed. He's about to get Mo pissed, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So this is where you get to see Roger kind of jump into the cockpit and go through his whole like activation thing. This is where the cast in the name of God, ye not guilty, rolls through again. So that was pretty cool. So now you get to see some big ass robot on robot action.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
You'd see a bunch of Big O, our Megadeus.
Yeah, the Megadeus.
Throwing some fists and Dorothy catching some fucking fists.
Well, I love that. So Dorothy's like little tendrils are like just about to get the plates, and then
he bear hugs her and just kind of pulls her back and away from it, and then Dustin's just like, hey, he's doing it. He's saving the plates, and I was like, bruh. Well, I think
it was great, but then
they pick and choose your battles here, buddy.
I think he like spun the other robot, Dorothy 1, and smashed her like into the building. The whole building leans over. Like, that's done. You got to tear that thing down. And Dustin's like, oh, motherfucker.
Oh, where do you think this money comes from?
Yeah, from that building. And literally the one you just destroyed.
That liquid money
money water building. That's where we treat it.
So they go through this whole thing where suddenly, there's been this shove battle between these two robots.
But now Dorothy's in like combat mode, right?
Yeah. Like these tendrils have gone back into the arms. These like claw pincers they have like grown kind of like in size, and they're actually now like sort of like a fist mechanism that's sort of just punching Big O on pinching him right on his little shield. And so
he's just got his hands up in front of him, just like absorbing the blows, just kind of hanging out, not really doing anything.
So it takes a couple seconds, and then suddenly, Megadeus is able to get a couple punches in, and then how does Dorothy then kind of like trip him up, which ultimately leads to her demise?
Yeah, so there's a couple weird things that happen here towards the end. The tendrils kind of come back out, but it's at the same time that Dorothy 2 walks back into the fray. So she is going against the flow of traffic. Everybody else is running away from this battle. She's kind of running towards it. Dustin sees this and is just like, little girl, no, because he doesn't know that she's like a 12-ton android or whatever she is at this point.
Right.
So he's running after her. She's in like this weird trance where she's kind of been talking to herself, but nobody's been paying attention to her. She keeps saying like, Father, don't do this, or Father, no, or whatever. She's in this weird trance. And then the tendrils shoot out and they wrap themselves around the Megadeus. Both Dorothys lift their arms. So now it looks like Dorothy 2 is either controlled Dorothy 1 or maybe vice versa, but probably that way. So that's a little wrinkle, which we don't really fully understand yet. But Roger's totally fine. He just kind of like twists himself out of the situation, fires up that whatever pneumatic punch he's got. Yeah. We still don't know how it works.
Shotgun arm.
He's got a lit cigarette that launches out of the back of his elbow. And then that's what it looks like. And then punches the other robot in the face. The lit cigarette jams back into his elbow, and then his fist like explodes, and the robot is just like disintegrated. Not disintegrated. Basically, it has a hole.
Shoots a hole through its chest.
And then at this point, Dustin has reached Dorothy 2 and is trying to pull her to safety because she's an android, her like metal feet kind of scrape across the ground, and she's so heavy that she pulls him over with her as she falls. So now they're on the ground, and Dorothy 1 is slowly falling on top of them, and Roger looks to be too slow to be able to help. And unfortunately, that's where
be continued.
That's where they cut it to the next episode. Dorothy.
Good Good teaser. Good. We talked about this. We talked about this recently with a lot of shows. And it's one of those things that, like, if you can leave us with a little bit of a cliffhanger, like on that episode, to want us to click, episode 2 immediately. Yeah, this is what we're looking for, guys. This is how to write for this pilot.
Yeah, and you had great
little bit of dashes of exposition in here.
Yeah.
Good setup.
Good character introduction,
context.
world introduction.
Yeah.
Good battle, like a really good battle between the two.
Atmosphere. Fun escalation in terms of some of the action, albeit very brief. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
But you get a good teaser, and then you're left with this cliffhanger. So, way to put that carrot right in front of me. I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna eat it for another 25.
I'm gonna put that.
25 episodes.
I'm gonna put that carrot in a glass. I'm gonna fill that glass with milk. I'm gonna let it sit for 2 minutes, and I'm gonna eat that carrot.
What?
What?
The fuck?
Carrot milk.
Oh God.
What's wrong with this? That's a normal thing to do.
Well,
we know how Sean feels
Saturday
about
morning
Big O.
cartoons.com/carrot milk. You can order your
Look for our late night infomercial.
Soylent carrot milk.
You can get a free order of carrot milk when you buy Money Water. So we're gonna get to our final thoughts on Big O here in a second, but there are some other folks out there who might have a difference of opinion. So Sean, what do you got for us here first?
All right, I'm gonna read this. Love it. We have a Red Carpet Room from the United States. This is back in 2006. Red Balloon and Red Tomatoes. Big O is not like any show I have ever seen. The writers clearly have an extensive knowledge concerning Greek mythology and even Christianity. It is a cartoon, sure, but the depth of the show is very subjective. The show itself gives the viewer just enough clues to allow one to believe that all of the other unending parade of questions will somehow be answered. But apparently they won't. The show walks a profound balance of story and probability and divine vagueness. That's actually a really good way of putting that together. Yeah, well done.
Good job, Red Carpet Room.
Yeah, good job, Red Carpet Room. I saw a few episodes of the show and became hooked like no other show I've ever seen. The overall themes are far from light, two of them being memories and ultimately attempting to define life. What is the value of one's life without memories? What separates humans and androids in a futuristic world without knowing which actually came first? And that is assuming who and what each character actually is, which is far from a given. My obsession with the show did eventually wane, largely because the show itself is rather slow at times, but plenty of action scenes with enormous robots also representing something, I'm sure, to balance the pace, but those battles rarely excite me. The truly strange aspect of this show is that the majority of it for me is window dressing. It's the symbolism that is scattered throughout each episode that elevates the show to atmospheric levels. This show is just smart enough and just open-ended enough for each little mysterious detail to have some profound meaning. This show has everything within it to be the basis of a new religion in and of itself. Seriously. The fact that all the answers can plausibly be answered but aren't makes Big O that much more lifelike in nature.
So I don't know if you knew this, but I've recently become a convert to the Church of the Big O.
Oh my God.
Which kind of explains the carrot milk and the money water, I guess, in retrospect.
Oh God.
This is part of our faith. You can't tell me what I
I'm not
can't
judging.
do.
I'm not
you can't
judging.
Judge. You're not allowed to judge.
I'm clearly telling you you're wrong.
About which part? The
All
carrot
of
milk?
Yeah, it's carrot money, and then...
Oh, do I have it backwards?
Yeah, it's okay.
Shit.
Read the pamphlet.
I've got to go through the bridge again. Damn it. and the clear.
Bridge.
Damn it.
So we weren't able to really find, like, an actual hated it for this show.
Well, I'm sure they're out there, but not on IMDb at least. So the person who gets the closest is Aaron1375 from back in 2009. He titles this review, "This show just seemed to try too hard to make the story surprising." It's a nice title of your review. Here he goes. "I like this show for the most part. The main problem I had with it are the strange ending episodes of both the first and second season, as it were. I was disappointed with the way the first season ended or the series wrapped up as a whole. I think the show was supposed to have ended after the first season, but Americans wanted more, so it came back. And it was interesting again until it neared the end, and once again, it got a bit too muddled for my tastes. The show had it all, though. James Bond kind of action, and espionage, and giant robots duking it out, which I totally remember from James Bond. It's my favorite thing of James Bond.
It's like the classic quintessential James Bond.
It's like what you need in James Bond. Though most shows had a pattern of some sort of little mission for the main character, Roger, and then some super robot would come and he would summon his own little robot, Big O. Little robots.
Little robot.
And they would, of course, clash. Granted, it does seem repetitive written here. However, it played out very well, and there were certainly some interesting story arcs going on. I was so interested to see how it all wrapped up, but in the end, did not work, as I just thought Dorothy was not involved enough, and Angel, who we don't meet yet, became this super important character out of nowhere. Still, it looked good, and for the most part, most of the other episodes was very entertaining. Just did not care for the cause of the strange city known as Amnesia. 7 out of 10,
man.
So still not bad. It's passing grade.
Still doing okay.
So what about you, buddy? Do you recommend it? And if not, does it get the dip?
I recommend this show. I recommend checking it out. I think it's I think even if you just watch the pilot, I think it's it's extremely solid entry into this genre. I think it gives you a lot of things to really think about and consider. And if you liked it as much as I think it's gonna hook you for a second episode.
Yeah, as for me, I've decided to, convert my entire life into following the Big O as a new religion. So I, of course, recommend it. I mean, how could I not? The Big O is our Lord and Savior of the giant Megadeus. Megadeus.
Megadeus.
The crazy thing is when you guys get to see the episode where he's sacrificed on a giant metal cross. That's a crazy episode.
Oh my god!
I don't know if that actually happens or not now. It was a joke, but it might be a real thing. Not sure.
I'd actually have to go back and watch.
It actually might be a real thing.
Oh no!
Yikes! Welcome to the Church of the Big O. Thank you for joining us, Sean, buddy. What do you have going on in the next couple of weeks for our listeners out there?
Guys, as always, I do live improv comedy in Washington, D.C. with a group called Knox. You can find tickets and information witdc.org. And I'm always on Instagram and Twitter at Sean Paul Ellis.
You can find me on Twitter at DrClawMD. You can also find me on Collider.com, Nerdist.com, and DaveDrumbore.com. If you're interested in finding out more about Saturday morning cartoons, Money Water, Carrot Water, or Carrot Milk, or the Church of the Big O, you can do so at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons. Remember, that's morning with a U. You can also check out our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com, or find us on Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's handiwork over on our Instagram page, keep the conversation going on Facebook, and listen to our free audio podcast each and every week through YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you have a suggestion for a future episode or just want to join the Church of the Big O, feel free to drop us an email, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Pal, this not only wraps up our 150th episode, it also wraps up Anime April, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it does.
So,
we are.
Man, what's going on next?
I don't know. We got a bunch of stuff going on in May.
I feel like May needs like a theme. Like it needs like a
something
mouse.
That's alliterative.
Yeah, like maybe mouse cartoons. Maybe
mouse cartoons.
Is there meatloaf cartoons?
There's no. Oh my god, is there a meatloaf
Are there at
cartoon?
least 4 meatloaf cartoons?
I really kind of want to watch 4 meatloaf cartoons.
Well,
if it's
maybe
4
next year,
cartoons about like anthropomorphic meatloaf,
or just the singer Meatloaf.
But honestly, though, I would do anything not to have to watch an anime meatloaf.
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailed it.
Thank you for picking up on it.
Got it. So
now sing it.
Next time. So I don't know. What do you want to do for May? I almost said what it was.
Should we get into some Marvel cartoons?
Oh, that sounds marvelous.
Oh my god!
You knew it was coming.
Like I set you up.
You really did. I have a very narrow range of jokes, and you knew it was going to fall right in there. Yeah, we're going to be covering some Marvel cartoon series, and we're going to cover kind of a wide range of characters that you know, characters you've never heard of, different time periods, some very contemporary, some pretty, not old, but old enough. Yeah, it's going to be a fun month, I think. Should be a good time.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you guys for joining us for Anime April, and hopefully you stuck around through all of Mecha March Madness, and we're coming up with Marvel May next month. It's going to be a good time.
Wow.
So thank you guys again for listening, and we will see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.